So for those who don't know me, I'm Stephanie Einen. I'm the head of Standards Makers Engagement and Inclusion at BSI. And I have the privilege today to introduce your speaker and moderator, Nikki Stopford. And Nikki is the chair of the BSI Consumer Forum, which you heard about a moment ago, which is a group of UK consumer organizations guiding BSI on consumer affairs and strengthening the UK consumer voice in standards. She is also the co-founder of Consumer Voice, a UK digital platform and community promoting access to justice. She has 25 years of experience advocating for consumers and raising industry standards. So please join me in welcoming Nikki.
Thank you, Stephanie, and everyone in the room as well. It's lovely to be here. I'm thrilled to be kicking off this first panel discussion. Not thrilled to be following Rachel, who did a brilliant job this morning. So it's really, really excellent. Now, actually, I do want to pick up on some things that Rachel said. But first of all, there's 4 seats down here if anybody needs them over there. There's 4 seats there. I did want to pick up on a few things because as a business owner, I am engaging with AI every day. Now, we're a small startup business, and so we're picking and choosing the tools that we use, whether that's to use tools to help us identify consumer detriment and what triggers consumer detriment, make better choices about the content that we're publishing, understand how consumers are acting in our own marketing journeys, or just using tools that do help us be more efficient. But it is a minefield. We're marketed every day with hundreds of different types of AI tools. And don't get me started, my business partner's down here as well, but don't get us started on investment as well. We've been trying to be invested recently, get investment recently, and without AI in front of your product's name, it is almost impossible. So the points that Rachel was making there about lots of rubbish products coming onto the market, that's why. We've pitched against some of those rubbish products as well, and they're seeing the light of day over our really excellent product. So it's very frustrating. As a consumer, I'm obviously engaging with AI every day. We all are. And, you know, some of it's rubbish and some of it's frustrating. It's helping us when we're searching for things, when we're, interacting with everything from watching TV, the apps that we're using, when we're trying to talk to our energy companies, our broadband providers, our banks, and so on and so on. So it really is here and everywhere, and this is obviously the big challenge that we are trying to talk about and address today, that AI is moving fast and very fast. It's being developed and deployed across borders, often by private multinational companies. It's already reshaping the way we live, the way we work, the way we connect, the way we interact in so many different ways, as we've heard plenty of this morning. AI products and tools are making very high-stake decisions, whether that's about financial credit, whether that's about healthcare, in all sorts of way. Yet, as we also heard from Rachel, AI systems are often complex, opaque, and not always designed with fairness, inclusivity, and transparency in mind. So at best, from a consumer perspective, that leaves people disconnected with the products that they're using, frustrated with the products that they're using. At worst, it leads to discrimination, to privacy violations, to unequal access to services. So we've really got to ask the question, how can we ensure that AI benefits everyone while protecting consumers from harm? So AI is evolving faster than regulation. Laws across borders are finding it difficult to keep up, but are also varying widely. So it makes it difficult to control and regulate the development and deployment of AI systems and software and tools. To give one illustration, around the world, at least 69 countries have proposed 1,000 AI-related policy initiatives and legal frameworks to address public concerns about AI safety and governance. So a huge amount. So this is where there is a real potential for standards. If developed well, if developed fast enough, if developed with all voices included in them, have a potential to be a really powerful and practical tool for protecting consumers. Standards give us a language, something that's clear and consistent, that can cut across borders. and also industries as well. They can help ensure that AI systems are designed to be safe and transparent, accountable, even where laws have yet to catch up with that. They can bridge the gap between different national approaches to AI regulation and ensure a more consistent, reliable and inclusive experience for consumers worldwide. And from a consumer perspective, that's obviously huge. So standards done well really do have the potential not only to manage and minimise risks, but also provide and promote and maximise trust in AI systems. Consumers are more likely to engage with AI when they know that they're operated within a framework that takes their rights to heart and their well-being. And this isn't just me saying, and I did find a piece of data that BSI had published last October, a survey of 10,000 adults globally, that found that 6 in 10 people think that there should be a standardised system for flagging issues or inaccuracies in AI tools. All of this is, of course, driven by consumer trust in AI. Research with UK consumers from Ada Lovelace and Alan Turing Institutes found that 2/3 of the public have encountered AI-related harms, with false information, financial fraud and deepfakes being the most common. Half of the UK public don't feel represented in decision-making around AI. 8 in 10 are concerned about public sector bodies sharing their data with private companies to train AI systems. And nearly 9 in 10 believe that it's important that the government or regulators have the power to stop the use of AI products if they're deemed to pose a risk of serious harm to the public. So well-designed standards not only have the potential to oversee AI safety, but they can tackle things like fairness, like clarity, like being able to ask questions or raise concerns if you're worried about things going wrong. So I do want to start exploring this now with a really fantastic panel who are properly giving us a global perspective on this real challenge. We have representation from Asian Pacific, European and North American perspectives as well. We did have Africa covered, but sadly, Catherine, who was due to join us, couldn't get her visa in time. But I would like to welcome instead Chiara Giovannini, who is joining us as Chiara is the Deputy Director General of ANEC, which is the European Consumer Voice and Standardization. We've got Bradley Gold. Bradley is a Canadian attorney, a lawyer for most of us in the room, and also an ISO COPOLCO member. Please join us, Bradley. And we've got Saral James, who many of you in the room already know is manager of the Malaysian Association of Standards Users. Saral, please come and join us.
Thank you. I'm just going to switch over to the mic now. Do you want to take a seat there? Thank you. Okay, so I'm really pleased to be joined by the three of you, and I just want to kick off, first of all, just with some introductions about you, who you're representing, and your interest in this area. So, Chiara, do you want to start?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much to the meeting organizers to invite me to discuss standards and AI for consumers. ANEC is the association, the European Association representing consumers in standardization and the legislation linked to standardization. Our members are coming from the European countries. There are several of our members here today because they also participate in ISO COPOLCO, and ANEC is an observer to ISO COPOLCO. Why do we look after standards and the legislation linked to standards? We have heard this morning the standards are very relevant for consumers, but at the European level, we have a specific use of standards linked to legislation. And guess what? Why do we do it? Because there are standards that are linked to legislation, and the AI Act is one example. of this use of standards linked to legislation. I will later on explain a little bit more how it works, but really what I would like you to keep in mind is that the European standards are going to provide presumption of conformity with the legal requirements of the AI Act for high-risk AI systems. And this is really key. We need all voices heard around the table, including the voice of consumers, when elaborating those standards.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chiara. And we're going to talk a lot about the importance of the consumer voice and how vital it is in standards development. Bradley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Do you mind if I stand up so especially the folks in the back can see? Hello, everybody. My name is Bradley Gold. I'm here with the Canadian delegation. It's just so nice to be here and so nice to share this conversation with everybody. I'm here wearing a few different hats as I represent the North American perspective. I am a new convener of Working Group 21 in COPOLCO. We're responsible for outreach and communication. My other new convener is actually sitting up here in the front as well. And in addition to my role in ISO COPOLCO, I am Vice Chair of Canada's Mirror Committee to JTC1's newest subcommittee, SC44. We're focused on consumer protection and matters of privacy in technology. In addition to my work here within the standards community, I've been a practicing attorney with an international practice that's been based in the US, actually, for about the last 20 years, and been an entrepreneur, business owner, co-founder, founder, entrepreneur for the better part of 30 years. As a result of that collection of experience and the roles that I have, when we discuss the consumer perspective, I recognize that I bring a little bit of a different conversation to the table. Throughout my career, I have used standards the way I thought everybody used standards, which was to answer questions, solve problems, identify best practices in a particular subject matter area, and make sure that the companies I work with, the products that they make, the services they provide are as high quality, as safe, accessible as possible. I work in a variety of industries, especially where there is the intersection of law, technology, business, highly regulated industries. A lot of my work is very boring, but a lot of my clients get to do some fun stuff. I just came here, for example, from the tiny, fun little country of Moldova, where one of my Canadian clients has an engineering development office where we spend a lot of time talking about standards and the right ways to develop technology for international banking. After this conference, I'm heading back to Canada, and amongst my clients I'm going to be hanging out with the Electrify Expo. If you're interested in electric vehicles or anything electric, from scooters to cars, motorcycles, anything else, it's a fun place to go check some stuff out. So I get to do the boring stuff to allow my clients and my entrepreneurial friends and colleagues to be able to do the fun things that we all want to enjoy as consumers. Now, as we all sit here in this room together, we are from all corners of the world. We are from all aspects of just about every possible spectrum that anybody can imagine. But to have a conversation here about AI, it's important to remember what we have in common. I'd like to just ask the room a question. What do Vladimir Putin, the new Pope, and Harry and Meghan all have in common? They're all concerned about AI. So we need to have a conversation about this, and I look forward to your questions and the conversation we're about to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bradley. Getting applause for your intros. That's amazing. I actually am going to just invite us all to stand up, because it is difficult, I think, for people at the back of the room or even in the middle of the room to see. So, Saral, would you like to introduce yourself as well? Yeah.
Cheers. Hello, everyone. My name is Saral James. I'm serve as Secretary General of Malaysian Association of Standards Users, as known as Standards Users for short. I come with 20 years of experience with strategic procurement in quality assurance auditing, with a focus of course, improving the system, driving cost efficiency, and supporting organizational excellence. In addition to my leadership role, I also manage complaints handling function, where I work closely with consumers and stakeholders to ensure that issues are resolved effectively, and we foster culture, accountability, and continuous improvement. Beyond Malaysia, I'm from Malaysia, truly Asia. I'm actively involved in international standardization to serve as a convener of working group of WG23 on capacity building and training. With me, I have Sadie and Julie and Nikki, was done a very good job, a great job yesterday. Yeah, thank you very much. And also, I co-led WG5 earlier, 3 years ago as a global marketplace with Teresa. It's a pleasure to be here because I don't want to talk much about myself. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I look forward to our discussion about AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we will stand up, I think, probably for the discussion and questions. And we're going to come to the audience as well to ask questions in a moment. In fact, if I just give you this as well, so both of you got two. But before we do, I think I'll just open with a quick question for each of you, and perhaps, Chiara, if we can come to you as well. I really do want to pick up on what you were talking about there, about what consumer protection looks like from ANEC's perspective, and what the involvement of consumer in standards development that support European AI regulations look like.
With pleasure. As mentioned, ANEC is representing consumers in standardization. It means that we participate in standardization. For AI, we are working on standards on AI risk management, data quality and governance, record keeping and logging, transparency, provision of information to users, human oversight, accuracy, robustness, cybersecurity, and conformity assessment. This list is very long because those are the requirements that the Act imposes on products to be put on the European market. And as mentioned, the standards will operationalize those requirements to be then used by manufacturers, by providers, by designers to put the products on the market. We are also creating and organizing trainings for our representatives to keep up with the technological developments, with the knowledge, but also we want all stakeholders to be included. We are co-chairing a working group inside the technical committee dealing with AI at the European level, the ANEC Joint Technical Committee 21. This task group is dealing with inclusiveness. It has been felt since the beginning that AI is a revolutionary technology, is having an impact on our daily lives. The European standards are having a legal effect. We need everyone around the table, and inclusiveness is going to be one of the elements also by which the standards, the quality of the standards will be judged. We were very lucky to convince the European Commission that is asking for those standards because we are operating in a regulated environment to pay attention to inclusiveness and to have it as a requirement for the development of the standards. This is the first time it happens. Mm-hmm. We are also running awareness campaigns for consumers and especially also NGOs in general to be aware of the standards, on how to participate in standardization. We have a lot of webinars organized. We have done it in the past. We are continuing to do it. We also have experts. As I mentioned, we manage an network of experts directly participating, but we also just set up a task force of national experts. As you know, standardization is based on the national delegation principles, so it is important to have experts in all the national committees to be able to intervene, and because AI is very complex as a technology, it's very unlikely that we are able to have AI experts in all the national delegations, but we can mutualize our knowledge. We can have consumer positions that can be then used at the national level. This is how ANEC operates. Just to mention that the European standards on AI should have been ready by April 2025. Because the Act will start to get into application as of April 2026. There are enormous delays in the work. The work is not easy. I will give some examples perhaps later on. But there are also some power games that are played. You well understand that AI is has a very important economic impact, but it also a little bit geopolitical, especially at the international level, and we are here at the international level. So we now expect those standards to be ready next year. It will be just at the beginning of the year. It will leave very little time to providers and designers and developers to use those standards. We will have to see how useful they are going to be. Thank you very much.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Chiara, just giving us both perspectives of how standards are supporting regulation, but also being inclusive in the way they're developed as well with consumer voice. So thank you. Saral, can I just invite you to talk a little bit about the experience of some of the consumers in the southeast regions and how that's starting to shape AI governance and standards development? You want to come in? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Nikki. I would like to share a few quick thoughts, on how people in Malaysia and around the Asia Pacific are feeling about artificial intelligence or AI. AI becoming part of our lives, and from health applications, which we know, online banking, even traffic and also deliveries. Many people see the benefits and convenience, but at the same time, they're asking important questions like, is this my personal data safe? Is this AI systems fair? Or can I trust the decision of a machine is making about me? In Malaysia, the government has taken few steps in the right direction with the National AI Roadmap. And now they have launched in 2023 the new AI governance, ethics governance guidelines, And they are positive moves, and but consumers' point of view, and many still want more clarity on this AI, especially about how their data is being used and how decisions are made and what it means for them personally. So the good news is Malaysia guidelines actually quite in line with the international standard, ISO IEC 38507, which is on about AI, IT governance, in information technology, and also ISO IEC 42001 about managing AI systems. So these aren't official yet, but the ideas match, focusing on responsible and fair AI. So if we look at Singapore, I'm touching about Asia. So if we look at Singapore, they are actually a bit ahead. Their governance has more clear framework, and even a certification system for AI is already in place. So that helps people more confidently using AI systems in Singapore. And in countries like Indonesia, we have Indonesian delegates here, and also the Philippines. They are focused more on AI to help people, especially in remote or low income areas. that's great, but still a digital gap. Many don't fully understand AI, and they may worry about losing jobs to machines without enough support or training. So one issue that we can hear across the region is about bias. And people want to know AI will treat everyone fairly. Yeah. So whether it's in loans, you're applying for loans, jobs, or healthcare. And if something goes wrong, they want to know who's responsible. Yeah. So that is why I think international standards are important, and they help us all speak the same language about trust and fairness. And we also need to make sure that they work in a local context with good oversight and strong consumer voice. So I would like to make a conclusion from here. So my say today is to move forward. What we need to focus on is first, building the trust by clear and transparent. And second is to make sure that smaller countries and also the underrepresented people, yeah, are part of the conversation. And push for ethical, fair, and inclusive use of AI in areas of life. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Saral. That's really, really helpful to start hearing some of the experiences of consumers in Southeast Asian countries, and to Canada and I suppose North American consumer views more generally. Bradley, if you can just talk a little bit about consumers' perspectives on experiences in relation to AI and how that aligns to standards development.
There's quite a few differences between Canadians and Americans, and let's also not forget our friends in Mexico, the Caribbean. The rest of North America is more than just the US and Canada. And no matter where I spend time, no matter where I do business, many human beings have the same concern. Again, I like to bring the conversation to a place where we recognize that we all have things in common, which makes it a lot easier to apply standards and solve problems and deal with, as Saral just said, some of the transparency issues we're all experiencing in technology. Every single one of us in this room is actually only defined by two things. Everything else is our differences. The two things that are the same are we're alive and we're consumers. Doesn't matter what your job is, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter anything else you have going on about yourself as a human being. We are all those two things. So this is the foundation upon which I do most of my work. And much of my work also originates from the tech sector, the startup community. All of us are impacted by a small handful of companies that just came from one neighborhood in California not that long ago. It's important to recognize that what happens in one part of the world or even just one community can end up impacting all of us no matter where it is that we live. If you try to apply the legal lens of what the laws say in the US, Canada, Mexico, any other North American country, it just becomes a difficult patchwork of trying to figure out where do I start. But that's the wrong place to begin a conversation. The place that we want to begin a conversation is, well, what do we know? We as human beings also tend to care about the same things when it comes to working with technology. People in Canada and people in the US may have slightly different priorities about what they care about first, but the cares tend to be the same. For example, Canada and the US are both very large countries in terms of land mass. The United States has 10 to 12 times the number of people occupying that land mass. So in Canada, there are more issues with providing accessibility to internet, let alone some of the other technology that doesn't exist the same way in the United States. The United States geographically has internet and cell phone coverage for 99.9 something% of the country, whereas Canada, there are lots of places you can go where you still can't find a road to drive on, let alone get internet or cell phone reception. But again, those are the differences. So if you're living in Canada and you have more wide open spaces, you have the same concerns, but your priorities are a little bit different. And of course, there's differences in politics, there's differences in perspective on so many other things. And whether you're in the US, Canada, or any other part of North America, looking for laws like you have in Europe, you're just not going to find them. However, interestingly, our differences do begin to dissolve when we don't just look at the broader issues of AI or data protection or the concepts that we often talk about here, but instead focus on a specific use case. And I apologize, I forget the speaker's name downstairs from an hour ago. It was fantastic. Rachel. Because she pointed out a number of these specific issues that we all experience, many of which are actually legislated and protected in some way in the US or Canada. So even though some of you, especially the Europeans, may look at what's going on in North America and say this is totally unregulated, it's the Wild West, that's not entirely true. When we focus on particular issues, the differences kind of have a bit of, a bell around the outside. You know, we all start being the same things. We have all of our differences, but then when we come down to things like protecting ourselves from deep fakes, protecting ourselves from malicious postings and identity theft, when it comes to whether we're talking about Hollywood or Bollywood, both California and India, as far as I know, have laws protecting name, image, and likeness of entertainers. Because it's important for us to be able to protect our identity. It's important for us to be able to protect our data. It's important for us to be able to protect our privacy. We want to know that there's also security associated with all of this. And the list goes on when it comes to the characteristics of technology that we're trying to govern and understand through the lens of law and standards. But again, being here at a standards conference and at a standards themed week, I have often found, and I encourage all of you, to pick up a standard if you cannot find an answer to your question. And if for some reason you can't find a standard that answers your question amongst the 20,000 or so standards that have been published by ISO and IEC and some of the other major organizations, then come and talk to one of us, because that's how new work items get started. When consumers speak up and speak clearly about a problem and it makes its way into one of these conversations, that's where we can start to do something about it. And we can hopefully achieve the goals in the future that we're here to talk about.
Great. And I think that's a really nice segue in to taking questions and comments from the audience. So for our panellists, who would like to kick us off and take Bradley's invite? Henry at the back. Yeah.
Shall I start here and then hand it on?
Yeah. Have we got another question here? Let's start there then. Yes, sorry, let's start there.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you. If you can just introduce yourself as well.
Oh, hi, I'm Victoria from an organisation called RNID. It was really interesting to hear you talk and about the involvement of consumers in setting standards. And I was wondering whether beyond kind of consumer surveying of attitudes, or you talked a little bit about kind of education through webinars, whether you've been involved in anything more proactive and kind of really involving consumers in making decisions, kind of through deliberative dialogues or kind of other mechanisms to help people really understand the complexity of those issues and make a more informed kind of recommendation about what they think standards should be. I'd be interested.
Thank you very much. That's a really excellent question. Chiara, do you mind if I come to you for that in terms of what consumer engagement and involvement really looks like from a standards perspective?
Thank you very much for your question. I must say that ANEC has collaborated in the past with the organization on several standards linked to accessibility issue, and for AI, accessibility is also relevant because we know that according to the AI Act, the high-risk AI systems will have to follow some other standards that we have in Europe on accessibility. So there is really this wish to have inclusion since the beginning of the development of the standards with the help of additional standards. And inclusion and inclusiveness, they go hand in hand because we can't have inclusion if we don't have inclusiveness of the persons concerned by the standards themselves. As mentioned briefly at the beginning of my intervention, we aim to have an inclusive standardization system where everyone can express their voices. As ANEC, we express the voices of consumers of all ages and abilities. We therefore collaborate with with many organizations according to different topics, according to different areas, and we have seen that there is first of all the knowledge about standardization that has to be provided, which is sometimes an obstacle, I must say, because procedures tend to be a little bit obscure and they tend to be more and more complex. It would be beneficial to have a decision-making process in standardization that is simplified. And once we have created a knowledge base of standardization, what it can do and what it can't do, then we can also discuss the technology and then the impact on consumers of all ages and abilities, and how to take into account those impacts in standardization and how consumers can defend their positions in standardization. We also have a lot of trainings and webinars on how to survive a technical committee meeting, for example, how to present your views for our members, but also for our partners and the other stakeholders. There is always the doubt whether it's important to be aware and knowledgeable about the technology and then to pick up quickly about standardization, or to be a generalist and then pick up about AI and perhaps have already some experience in standardization. I think all of the above is fine. At the end of the day, we all come from different walks of life, of different experiences. What is important is that the system is allowing us to express our opinions, to participate in a sustainable manner. What we are facing in AI is that the work is difficult, but there is also a multiplication of meetings sometimes online, but also face-to-face, and then the problem of resources comes into play. You can be the best representative, to have the best ideas, to know everything about the rules of procedure, and to be able to stop any decision that seems to create harm to consumers. But if you can't keep up the steam, then it has little effect. So on one hand, we need to have the resources. On the other hand, we need a system that is able to have consumers participating in a sustainable manner. And there are some little things that need to be fixed for that.
Thank you very much. A very thorough answer. And just to say as well, we also in the UK have a forum for engaging with organisations that are working in very deliberative ways and understanding the different needs of the perspective. So please do come and talk to me about that as well afterwards, because I'd like to make sure that we are including the views of RNID. Super. So we're going to go to Henry. Are there any other hands that we'll come to next? Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's nice seeing Bradley, because you look different when we're online. He's taking over from me, because I'm convening. And I sat next to him and I was wondering, when I heard his voice, is this the Bradley who's going to take over me? So joking, but colleagues, you've just given very good things. And one of the aspects, consumer safety, we're just living, or we are transiting. You see, we have not yet done well with e-commerce. some spheres are doing well, but both in developed and developing world, people order things online and still they get challenges, either getting redress, getting the actual quality, and so forth. And picking up from Rachel downstairs and coming upstairs, as I was getting out when Rachel finished speaking, and I got an SMS message from my bank, be aware of fraudsters, they're using AI. And I said, while I'm seated in here, they're warning me of fraudsters using AI. Did they know where I am? But picking up from where I've just stopped, e-commerce is giving us challenges. Now, I'm asking myself whether we come up with standards, because they are cross-border regulations with e-commerce. Now, with AI being an invisible hand, who will take responsibility, irrespective of standards being in place, but people getting challenged as consumers? Just picking up from Bradley, you see, where I come from, there will be many areas where regulation might not reach, and the private sector can thrive, and the unscrupulous will take over. So the challenge is, with standards or without standards, how best can we safeguard the consumers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And who would like to, Bradley, do you want to pick up on that point?
I could at least initiate a response. I think Henry's comments are very interesting, because many of us have experienced some type of evolution of technology in our lives, whereas a lot of people outside this room went from A to Q in a matter of a day. You know, almost no technology, no familiarity with the technology, to suddenly having a cell phone, which in many parts of the world was given by a company like Facebook. And now this is your portal to reaching all of the technology and the internet and the services that are available. And as a result of the choices that these companies make, the way that we experience technology could be fantastic or maybe not so much. So as we evaluate the use and proliferation of technology, of course, we have standards, but we also have to be mindful of the way those standards are applied. Remember, a standard is best practices, but a typical, solid ISO standard will tell you what to do, not how to do it. So that means when we incorporate the consumer voice into the how aspect of the application of a standard, compliance with a law, compliance with common sense and ethics, that is where all of us, and especially consumers, need to be very vocal, need to be very clear, and the more that we can be unified in saying what it is that we care about, hopefully the businesses, the governments, all the institutions that are responsible for providing and supporting the technology that all of us use every day, the better. And it's even more important for those that don't have a lot of choices. In North America, one of the distinctions between the US and Canada is there's even, there's a lot of choices in Canada, there's almost endless choices in the US. So in the US and Canada, and in markets where you have a lot of choices, well, I don't like this technology, I'll try another one. I don't like this device, I'll try another one. But there's a lot of parts of the world where that choice also doesn't exist. So the more that we are aware of the softer side of how standards are applied and why it is that we use this technology, the better of a foundation I think we can all have to address the problems and concerns that we all seem to have in this room.
Super, thank you very much.
I'm finding this absolutely fascinating. I come from the dark side. I work in a sector which is not very popular. I'm also a compliance officer, and I spend a lot of my time finding holes in ISO standards, BSI standards, because my job is to find a commercial edge. And I'm also the CEO of an AI startup. My question to you is, right now we're talking about AI as an enabler. What happens when AI becomes a replacer? We're already starting to see tech coming out which is supposed to support people who are going through a bereavement process, which will distill the essence of a human so they can access it and use it as a support. The sectors which are now starting to experiment with that are the dating sector. And we all know how much fraud there is. So how do we protect the consumer essentially from themselves when it's not a commodity or a service? It's emotion that they're actually getting from the technology. And you may not be able to answer that right now.
Thank you. Are you willing to tell us where you are from?
Well, I come from the world of betting, gaming and gambling, as opposed to pornography. And it's a sector which is an early mover, an embracer of technology, and we probably have the only regulator which is encouraging us to adopt AI.
Okay, thank you. And sorry to force you to say
That's
that.
all right.
No, but it's a really good point, and standards development isn't always known as the fastest of processes. So how do we keep up with technology as it does develop and evolve, making sure the standards making process is agile as possible, whilst also protecting consumers' changing interests and protections? Saral, do you want to try and have a bash at that kind of sort of slightly tricky question?
I think standard is always listening to people, and we have a balanced stakeholders, which is coming from industry, from the government, even consumers, or maybe now, earlier I was talking about you need to hear the underrepresented voices also, because we wouldn't have known what other people are facing, like Rachel was facing a different issue. I might be facing a different issue because I'm coming from a developing country. So the issue is totally different. So that's why we need to have, ISO standards which hear all part of the story from all around the world. So the issues are different, and we need to tackle each and every one issues so that, standards covers the whole sum of problem, and we can provide the whole sum of solutions. So even though, we have a standard which is already developed today, and AI is progressing faster than what we're thinking, and we always need to keep up. Standards need to keep up, and of course, we have every 5 years we need to do a systematic review. But if we think that AI is progressing even faster than the 5 years, then we need to keep up. I think I also need to listen to that. And that's all. Thank you.
We've got a question in the middle of the room. You got a mic now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So in a lot of other areas of standards, let's use furniture as an example, you often hear, look, this table's been manufactured to ISO standards or BSI standards or SEN standards or wherever it is. Consumers get that comfort of knowing that what they've developed, what the purchase has been developed with standards in mind, and you see that across many different industries. Now, JTC1 Subcommittee 42, which I think is the one that is the AI committee, there's 30-odd standards currently that exist. I think there's another 25, 30 in development on the way at the moment. But I've never run into a developer or anyone at a medical conference or a consumer conference or anywhere that says, but I've constructed my product with 42,000, whatever it is, whatever the standards are, it's built to that standard. So why isn't that cutting through to the products that we're getting yet? Are we not doing enough to market the standards? Do we not have enough visibility? Is there not enough push? Why aren't we seeing that cut through with AI and software development?
That is a very good question. Thank you. We talked about that a lot yesterday as well. Even the best design standards are no use if they're not being adopted and implemented. Bradley, do you want to pick that one up?
Yes, I do, for a couple of reasons. First of all, part of how I got into standards was furniture standards. So, my experience with furniture standards was a lack of enforcement. And that led to a lack of trust in the system itself. So when standards are not properly enforced, but we see products that have especially the ISO certification slapped somewhere on the product, but then somehow the product doesn't do what we expect, then we all lose a bit of trust and faith in the system and don't use the standards as much. Specifically with regard to SC42, which is actually one of the first liaisons to SC44, they have a couple of issues, promotion, awareness, and branding being amongst them. But if we were to pull a more mature set of standards into the conversation, like the 27,000 cybersecurity series, you would be hard-pressed to find an engineer that does not recognize that standard as a representation of best practices and a way to do a lot of things the right way. So when all of us are working with and encountering standards, I think throughout our careers in this space, we will notice from time to time that a particular industry or group or a whole country or sector may lose faith and trust in what that standard actually means. So it is therefore up to us to make sure we are aware of the supply chain and the ecosystem around standards. People need to know about it. People need to understand where they come from. People need to be comfortable using them. And then everybody needs to recognize the right way to accredit and enforce the use of those standards so that our system and our work becomes part of the building process of trust and positivity and inclusion and access to all of these products, and not have it go in the other direction. So that's a fantastic point, and I think for the folks that you run into with the SC42 standards, let's give it some time and let's all get out and talk about it, because otherwise folks don't know that it's there, even those engineers.
Thank you very much. And I think probably I would just add one other point to that list, and that's ease of implementation. We're seeing lots of small businesses, individual developers developing new products in this area. So standards that are easy to adopt and implement as small businesses as well is also really key. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Thanks to Saral, Chiara, and Brad for their thoughts and for the work they are doing. And I am working in COPOLCO for more than 30 years. And so I am very happy to have Brad now working with us, because we need to have people that think as you, as a new generation, and come here to work on this difficult issue also. And I have a question to you, Brad, because you say you're working in the, participating in the CCTC 16 SC44, something like that. Yeah, okay.
It's a mouthful for everybody, yes.
So maybe I didn't catch if you're participating as Canadian or as a consumer representative.
Both.
Both. Okay. So I have to say, as consumer, I am very, how you say, tranquilo, calm. How you say? Relaxed. Yes. Because we have a consumer participating in that committee. But I want to ask you, how are you feeling as consumer there? How are your proposals taken by the other stakeholders there? Are people that are opposed in the subcommittee to protect consumers in the way that we need? Or it's difficult to convince the others about that consumers need protections? Because I don't know who are the other stakeholders, because Henry mentioned who are the responsibilities for artificial intelligence. So who are sit there is very difficult to imagine who are there. But how are you feeling participating as consumer there? Thank you.
I feel fantastic. Now, I will say that across ISO and JTC1, historically, consumer participation at the technical committee and working group level has been less than 1%. But that's not how I happened to join the standards community. I first joined the standards community with ISO PC 317, which originated with COPOLCO to focus on matters of consumer protection and privacy in technology. And at the time that that committee was created, I was doing much of the same work back then and looking for those best practices and answers, not just for myself as a consumer, but for my clients and my friends, my students at the time, that were all looking for answers in this space, especially with GDPR coming down the pipeline. This was around 2017. So I have always participated in standards through the lens of it being a very welcome conversation and perspective. Now, when PC 317 published ISO 31700, which is a standard that directly speaks to consumer protection and privacy protections, it is also designed to be easy to implement as far as standards go, but I'll admit there's some work to be done there. In PC 317, we had, I think, 17% of our membership was consumer participation. It was amongst the highest, if not the highest, in consumer participation of any ISO or JTC1 committee. And that core group of people, as we went through the very complex process of going from an ISO project committee to becoming a JTC1 subcommittee, the consumer engagement aspect was a significant part of the conversation, as was our group's willingness to acknowledge that we all enjoyed working with each other. We probably challenged each other more than many of the other ISO and JTC1 committees ever experienced, but as a result of some very robust and interesting conversations, we formed some fantastic working relationships, and in some ways I hope we're setting an example for other committees to not be afraid to bring in more consumers to participate in these conversations about AI and other advanced technologies.
That's great, thank you. I'm afraid we are running out of time now. I will come to one more question at the back, but I just before we do that, I just want to get you all thinking. You know, we've talked a lot about today about how obviously we're at a pivotal moment. We're also at the risk of missing the moment. And so I do want to close in a moment with a sort of one-step standards bodies can take now to really close that gap effectively between innovation and consumer protection. But before we come to you to answer that, we'll just have one question from Ray over there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Guillermo, that both Brad and I are on SC44. So I chair the Canadian delegation, but I did want to say that recognize that Brad is correct. The effect of the consumer members from the Canadian delegation, the British and the ANEC CI reps on the PC 317 is an example. So my first statement would be, if you do not have a member on SC44, get them on it, because this is our opportunity to show again that we as consumers can have an impact. The other thing I wanted to mention, that in my other roles, as the chair of the COPOLCO Committee for Canada, but I also am the chair of an international committee called ISO TC 145. And if you see these little signs, the green man, that comes under me. So there's 7,000 symbols. I was approached recently by an SC42 official in Canada, because Canada actually has a minister in the government for AI. And he wanted to know if they could get a symbol approved. So if I was looking at something or buying something, it would tell me it was AI generated, or it was human, or it was a mix. It hasn't progressed through my committee because he's getting some opposition from, I assume, some industries. But I think this is one of the things I want to ask is, Canada does have a certification program for AI. You can get it through the Standards Council. I'm wondering are we thinking about the things that we need to say? And I think actually the interest for me is, does a symbol that tells you something is or isn't at least starting to give us the information we need as consumers? So I'm curious as to what the three panelists think of that concept as an initial question. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's perhaps wrap an answer into that with the one thing standards body can do, and if we can keep it as crisp and short as possible, that'd be great. And I'm very sorry to the audience for not telling everybody not to talk in ISO code. I don't understand it either, so we will get the definition circulated hopefully at some point.
consumer policy is based on the principle of informing consumers for allowing them to make the best choice for their interest. In terms of digitalization, there is a limit of how much information you can digest, you can process, and then you can make your choice. Therefore, protection by design is what we need. Privacy by design is what we had in the standard that has been mentioned. And all other consumer relevant principles such as accessibility, safety, security, this is the only way to do it, we believe. And therefore, the standards can help in providing protection by design. How much this can be reflected in certification, I have some doubts, because again, certification is about informing, is about differentiating products on a market. There are some elements where we should just not have those products on the market, and as Rachel was saying, if it is not good enough, then it shouldn't be on the market. It depends where we put the bar. But if there is one thing that national standardization body have to do in this general AI standardization or digital standardization is to have stronger consumer representation, because consumers have to play a role in this use of protection by design, and the standards can deliver it, but if they can deliver is because consumers are there. Public support is needed for that, and the reason why industry representatives alone can't deliver is because sometimes they just don't have the knowledge, and especially AI technologies, they require a very broad scope of expertise, and common sense as well is one of those elements that as consumers we can bring to the table of discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Bradley.
We need some simpler language.
Perfect. Thank you. And Saral.
I think standards are very important. It's actually standardized all approaches throughout all countries. It's acceptable in all other countries. So I think for privacy by design, what Ray was talking about. So I would just want to share something from Malaysia, where these restaurants were putting AI pictures as a food pictures, so that consumers will see, I like this food based on the picture, but it's actually just by illustration. And it came out, it's like a viral thing. Then, we have to make a command that no more AI-generated pictures being, published for consumers in restaurants and all that. So I think people, already so engaged with AI, and what Rachel was saying, we have to be responsible in what we are using it. And I think ISO standards, or even standards or guidelines, need to be there, to guide people, especially those that, using AI to make a business, and reaching out to consumers. They have to be responsible. Yeah, thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Saral. And before I put you in front of some real food, can you please just join me in thanking our panellists?